So Liam Neeson in another Star Wars project. The Return of Qui Gon Jinn. You damn right I'm all for this. So today I'm on CBR.com when I come across interesting news. Liam Neeson is open to appearing in a new Star Wars project, specifically the Obi-Wan Kenobi series that they're talking about. Now, wasn't too much here other than the fact that it said that the new Obi-Wan Kenobi series on Disney will return with several Star Wars alumni, including Ian McGregor, to come back and play Obi-Wan Kenobi, of course, which is welcome, which is very welcome, because, look, say what you will about the prequels. Love them, hate them, do what you will with them. He did a good job. He was a decent and believable growing adaptation for what Obi-Wan Kenobi would become. I can buy it, and with even more time and now a whole other series under his belt, it's very feasible to me that they can run this out and really make me believe that that character is Ian McGregor. In fact, I would argue that now, by this point in time, he's more Obi-Wan Kenobi than what we were originally introduced to. It is what it is. We've spent more time with him. We've got to know this Obi-Wan more than the original Obi-Wan, more than the Clone Wars Obi-Wan, and in my personal opinion, because the Clone Wars Obi-Wan, even if you spent the entire series with him, they never really flesh him out besides what he has to do for the plot. Couple things here and there, but really, we get our big acting chops, and maybe it's the charisma more than anything else, because that is a big part of it. Sometimes charisma is a huge deal, and I feel like that's Obi-Wan Kenobi. All props to Ian McGregor. But yes, he said that sure, he'd be up for an appearance. Now, as of yet, while Liam Neeson is very interested in returning as Qui-Gon Jinn for an appearance in this series, it has not been offered to him. This is just something that happened to happen. He was being interviewed. They asked him a question. He said he'd be more than 100% ready for it. He's up for it. He thinks it'd be really cool. And I think that it would be immensely cool. Here's the thing. I've been asked this many times. Of course, this is a question that you get when you do fandom, especially if you ever jump anywhere near Star Wars fandom. One of the first things you're going to be asked, or at least at some point you're definitely going to be asked, who was your favorite character? Or more specifically, the question that I seem to hear all the time is, who's your favorite Jedi? Because let's be serious here, for all the expansiveness of the Star Wars universe, they focus on the Jedis. They always do. And because of that, they are primarily they're like the most famous characters, the most recognizable, the most popular. So you'll often get the question, who was your favorite Jedi? Now this is tough, because I'm the kind of person that likes to stick to a canon that makes sense. And I'm not talking about expanding the universe into 100 books to read, 1 million comic books to read, all this background material. What is shown on screen? Remember, for me, canon is where it makes its home. And Star Wars is a movie. First and foremost, a movie universe. Yes, we can expand it with series. Yes, I do count things like The Mandalorian as canon. And yes, for what it's worth, if they're doing Darth Vader comics, I'm not going to sit here and argue that it's not canon. I'm going to tell you that the canon that I first and foremost look to when proving a fact or making a decision is 100% what was shown on a movie screen or a television screen from current continuity. That's it. They get to make the final call. The comic books and books can tell all the stories they want, and if 10 years down the road the movie decides to do something that counteracts that extended canon, well, that was extended fan service canon anyway. It didn't matter. Now, when you contradict your own canon inside of your own movies and whatnot, that's when things get tricky. But we're not going into all that. We've gone into that before. When I have to think about it, when I really have to break it down, when I have to consider it, the one that keeps coming to mind Qui Gon Jinn. It is. See, here's the thing. I think that Qui Gon Jinn is the most Jedi of all Jedis that we ever saw. I do. Even when the dark side was clouding the Force, and the Jedi, even in episode 1, the Jedi were already having trouble. They were losing their connection to the Force. They were having troubles with their perception. They knew that their views were clouded. They didn't know why, but they knew. And in the second movie, they reveal 100% without a doubt, the second episode, you get the idea, that they no longer have that strong connection anymore. They've lost it. Something is wrong. And then the idea comes that should we reveal that this is, and he says, well, our enemies would duplicate from all sides. I think they talk about that in the third episode. Regardless, you know that they were losing their connection in the first movie. Second movie was worse. Third movie, it was a blank cloud. But Qui-Gon is different. I believe that he is very different than the Jedi. See, the Jedi allowed themselves to fall into politics. I'm not going to argue one way or another. I'm not going to tell you they were bad guys or this or that. What I'm going to tell you is that they'd lost their way. And it was very obvious that they'd lost their way. I even believe that they knew they'd lost their way, and that was part of the exile, is that the original people, the original foundation of the Jedi had lost their way. And even if Yoda could have come back 10 years later off of exile and whopped all over the Emperor and killed Lord Vader, let's say he could have done it. There's nothing necessarily stopping him from doing it. He could have just left Dagobah at any time if he could have communicated with somebody. And if he's super powerful in the Force, and we saw Luke, he can call his sister, then there's no reason he couldn't have called out to Obi-Wan 10 years into exile after they'd mastered some new technique or something and just went for broke. They decided not to, because I believe full-heartedly that they had seen it too. They'd lost their way, and they no longer had the right to continue on the path that they had chosen. There was still much learning to be done. They could guide the next generation, but the next generation was going to have to figure out for themselves the direction to take. So, they gave themselves another generation, another shot. And yes, it's true that they aimed Luke like a weapon pointed at the Emperor, okay? That's true. That's what they did. But look, there was something unique and interesting about Qui-Gon. While he trusted and understood why the council existed, he was not on the council. And it was of his own choice. He was friends with a good portion of the people on the council, and many of the people on the council respected him. And Qui-Gon, in general, was the kind of man that followed the Force, be it wherever it took him. And he never cried about his situation, and he never made necessarily light about his situation. He took the situations that he was given seriously, and he believed and trusted that the Force was guiding him towards an objective. Somewhere he was meant to go. Something he was meant to do. As long as you follow the will of the Force, the universe will unfold in front of you. And he believed in this. And he followed it like no other Jedi. All the way to his death, where he knew he was going to die. He knew. I don't think there was a doubt in his mind. I think that's the reason that he centered himself. He still knew that he had to fight, okay? But I think there was something in his mind. I think there was a realization at the end when he sat down, when he meditated, when he cleared his mind, when he prepared himself. I think he prepared himself for death. And I also have a bit of a theory on Qui-Gon. It's a loose theory, it's a small theory, but it's an interesting look at the Star Wars universe. They're all looking for the chosen one. I think they already found him. I think that it was Qui-Gon. I think that Qui-Gon, and this is not just because he's my favorite character, I recently went back through Star Wars, and I got realizing something. The prophecy says that there is a Jedi who will bring balance to the Force. It doesn't say that he will be the most powerful Jedi, and it doesn't say that he will have techniques above and beyond anything that we've ever seen, and it doesn't say that he will, become the balance of the Force himself. It says he will bring balance to the Force. Now, this is horrifying, because if you really look at it, there were all these good guys and there were these two bad guys. And it wasn't necessarily about creating gray Jedi. But if you look at the way things went, it's very interesting to see that Qui-Gon is the one that discovered Anakin. Qui-Gon is the one that made the decisions that led them there. Qui-Gon is the one that brought him before the Jedi Council. And Qui-Gon is the one that followed in the will of the Force, denying the Council and making it known that the boy would be trained one way or another. And it was Qui-Gon who enacted the idea for Obi-Wan to take and train the boy. And it was also Qui-Gon in the very end, that offered the technique that would allow for the training of Luke Skywalker, and later on, that same technique would come into play, whether we like the movies or not. That's not an argument here. Canon is canon. It has happened. Rey is a thing. And that last movie, no matter how awful that fucking fight was, that happened. And part of that fight was a transfer of power from the Jedi spirits. Qui-Gon was the one that figured out how to do that. Qui-Gon was the one that put so many things in motion, and even if he's not there for those things, I've always kind of thought to myself in the back of my mind that the Chosen One, the Jedi that brought balance to the Force through actions that he started, which then led to circumstances and a domino effect that, well, quite literally now, because Rey, she is kind of the balance of the Force. She has very dark powers. She does Force lightning and different things like that. And I know in original canon, Luke Skywalker and whatnot, I'm sorry, guys, I know, I get it too. I don't like what they did to Luke, but look, when everything's laid out in front of you, she does seem like, for some reason, she's almost immune to the dark side, but she's not quite a good guy either. She's a very emotional, self-driven Jedi that doesn't quite fall into the darkness or extend to the light. And she's not overcompensating in one direction or the other, trying to shun her emotions or control something or seek out a certain mission. That's like where Luke very much was driven to do a certain thing, and then was driven to learn everything he could about the Jedi, and then was driven to try this great thing, and then was driven to believe in himself to the point where a single failure, a massive failure on his end, caused the downfall of his first attempt. A second attempt, Luke probably would have done it. He probably would have learned something very important from that and rise and fall. Yes, it's sad what happened, but had he actually risen up and fought the First Order along with a set of Jedi that he could have trained personally and been there when they found Rey, we would have seen a very different, competent, different kind of style of Luke. But we didn't get that. We got Rey. And it's interesting that Rey has a certain field of power without ever having been trained, because she just naturally adapts in the Force. Unknown as to why or how her power is so severe where she can do Jedi mind tricks and things like that without ever being taught anything. And I get the idea, Palpatine's daughter, yada yada. So what? Luke Skywalker is the frickin' son of Darth Vader, and for some reason he doesn't get those specialty superpowers, and yet Darth Vader is literally the strongest Jedi of their time. They make it sound like he's the strongest Jedi ever, especially in the time that he lived. So, Luke doesn't get super special, amazing powers, but for some reason she does, and all these things are put in play all the way back when Qui-Gon started on his path. And I guess you could take that back to say that, oh, well, then if that's the truth of it, then Dooku was the one that trained Qui-Gon. But I'm not going to go that far back, because Dooku, I don't think sets the same things in motion, because it is very much Qui-Gon listening to the Force and being unlike other Jedi of his time that devoted himself solely to the will and voice of the Force that told him where to go, what to do, how to do it, and he just kind of followed that path, and he believed it. And it was through that path that Anakin is discovered and everything is set in motion. Yeah, you could argue my theory 1,000 points, and you could win that easily, and you could disprove me, but hey, that is why it's a theory, because it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be right. It's just something interesting that's always been on my mind, is that I feel like Qui-Gon is the actual chosen one. And having him back would be very interesting. It only has to be for an episode, maybe 2 at the most, or maybe he does some voice stuff here and there. It would be interesting to have him communicate with Obi-Wan and maybe even train Obi-Wan a little further in something. Have an entire episode dedicated to the two of them, where the ghost comes into focus, and have his ghost be different. Have him be a literal full manifestation, not just the ghost. Have him literally appear in full body apparition and actually like in color and everything, and have him have an entire episode with Obi-Wan where they flesh something new out and then he fades off into the sands or something like that. It would be interesting. It'd be neat. I don't see that they couldn't do it. In fact, it would make a lot of sense, because later on Obi-Wan knows how to do the ghost thing, and I guess it's true that Yoda tells him, oh, special training I have for you, but Yoda never got to instill that training, necessarily. He just kind of said, your master figured out how to do this thing, now we can do this thing. Can we? Can we just do the thing? I kind of need to be taught how to do a thing. I need to at least see it done or something like that. That's where my thought process is. Anyways, great news, wonderful news, awesome news. If he's up for it, I really, really, really hope Disney is up for it. I hope they get off their ass. I hope they make it happen, because I want Qui-Gon back. I want him back for just an episode. He's probably my favorite in terms of canon Jedi. Yeah, I think so. I'm going to get out of here.
I have spoken. Take what you will from it.